Here we are.
Um, all right. So yeah, I guess I'll start on a somewhat of a proper intro. But I guess our COVID Chronicles episodes kind of didn't happen that much because you and I actually ended up really busy during quarantine. But
We
you were
did.
busy with work. I was busy with starting a job at a brand new ad agency and also moving to Vancouver across the entire continent.
This is a
Um,
big episode, big new things.
yeah, right? It's exciting. Like I like these. It's fun to record these. But was just a little too busy to get one in here. So this is an episode I wanted. You and I have been talking about recording this for like 6 months probably. But
Oh man, this is the day of reckoning.
yes, exactly. So porn. It's such a taboo topic. Like people literally they kind of look at you funny even for talking about it sometimes. But we live in a really weird time where it's an actually it's actually a large problem, and many people don't even know this. They don't even know how it's affecting people. They don't know how severe it is, and I feel like there's a lot of issues in society, in modern society, that are out in the open, and everyone kind of knows they're there. And this is one that's almost entirely brushed under the rug for some weird reason. I think people just feel uncomfortable talking about it because it applies to almost everyone, because it applies to almost every young man in the westernized world. And and people are just, it's just very close to home because everyone has brothers, sisters, it's not just a problem for men. But I guess for this
Mhm.
topic, you and I are probably better at touching on it from that perspective, the side of the masculine realm. But um I feel like this is just a good entry point to it. But there was a TED talk that I stumbled across. So maybe I'll just talk about my introduction to the world of porn actually being bad and making the choice to not watch it. And not only that, just kind of give a backstory on why and what exactly it does to people. But yeah, I had a friend tell me about this thing. There's a community online called NoFap, and I don't,
Hey,
yeah, I don't really like the name.
represent.
I mean, it's a good community. It's like men getting their shit together so they can be better guys for the world. But um, I think the name NoFap takes credibility away from it, unfortunately. But
Maybe.
um, yeah, and I had a buddy years ago talking about, I came across this NoFap community, and he stopped watching porn and he started feeling amazing. And that was the first introduction to it. And I think maybe this is an important preface to include in here at the very start. But um, almost all young men either have or do watch porn. It's literally one of those things that you can't really argue anymore. There's been a lot of studies where they've tried to research the effects of porn on the brain, and they try and get a group of men who watch porn a ton, a group of men who watch porn a little bit, and a group of men who don't watch porn. And they can almost never find a group of men who don't watch porn or have never watched porn.
That sounds about
There
right.
was a Yeah, there's this famous study from McGill University in Montreal where the study, basically the most crazy finding of the study was that they couldn't even find a control group big enough of men who have never been exposed to porn, young men in their 20s. So as much
Jeez.
as you or whoever's listening might even feel uncomfortable listening to this right now, it applies to all of you. It applies to all of us. It's a really big thing among young men. It's not necessarily good for our brains. But to go back and finish off the little intro story that I have, yeah, I heard about it years and years ago, probably about 7 or 8 years ago now. Thought it was interesting. Thought my friend who told me about it was a really inspiring, fascinating guy who had his shit together. But just didn't take it seriously, didn't look into it. And years later, I was in like a crisis of anxiety. This is something I talked about on my podcast before, but I was at a point where I was like on EI, getting money from the government for being unemployed. And I was a young person, had no path in mind. And I just kind of I think maybe I was lucky to be exposed to a few people who snapped me out of it. But one of the tools that really honestly helped me then was coming across this TED Talk that talked about porn's effects on the brain and the recovery of the brain when you remove porn out of your life. And that's what the NoFap community is all about. Like, get your brain back to normal so you're not addicted to that crazy stimulation that porn provides, because the real world is not like that. And it takes away your ability to function in the real world. But, and yeah, you know, there's, even to this day, I kind of turned things around pretty well for myself personally. I think I'm in quite a good position in my life professionally and personally and spiritually too. And the three things I always basically toted was like, meditation every day helped me a ton, which is of course why I'm a meditation teacher and teaching work teams how to manage stress and whatnot. Quitting porn was enormous for me. It totally decreased my anxiety. It totally decreased my ADHD-ness, whatever you want to call it, because I was never diagnosed. But totally increased my mood levels, my ability to sleep better, even to keep muscle on better because there's more testosterone flowing through your body, little things like that. But yeah, it's one of the, and then I think the third thing was just, you know, investing in yourself. When I was investing and started actually being willing to put money towards things and towards my own learning, it totally changed everything. But anyways, I'm rambling, but
no, I'm liking it. I'm absorbing it.
Yeah. But in a nutshell, you know, porn in this TED Talk from, I forget who it was, a pretty well-known researcher, he's talking about how when you watch porn, you get a massive blast of serotonin and dopamine, just brain chemicals, like reward and pleasure chemicals, just flood your brain. And realistically, porn is kind of shot in a way that's not even what real intimate relationships are like. And in that sense, you get more of a flood than actual sex. At least, you know, if you're using porn every day. And yeah, it really desensitizes, first of all, real sex, but it decreases male confidence. Like, men are at their best when they have healthy levels of testosterone flowing through their body. It's like the chemical that keeps us going in that way. And you're using it all up on a video, watching other people do their business. It's actually weird when you break it down like that, but yeah, flooding your brain with chemicals and then just using them all up. This is normally a baseline wave, like brain waves of those chemicals, like the amounts that would naturally be flowing through your brain or your body. And you end up with like flooding it. So it shoots up and then your baseline drops. And when your baseline of the chemicals that keep you confident, happy, focused, alert are low all the time, and you're constantly doing this, you end up, in a nutshell, with a whole society of men who have more anxiety than is natural for a man, who have more ADHD than is natural for a man, who have more, I don't know, self-doubt than is natural for a man. All of these things. And I personally think it's one of the biggest crises out here for the masculine realm at the moment. And I have a lot of friends who completely deny this, and they have really horrible evidence to back up their claims. So I don't.
It's a controversial argument.
It's controversial because I think people take it personally because they're like, well, I do that, and that's an attack on me. But you're not someone who's against it. You've tried it for yourself, and you've like obviously know what it feels like. And a lot of the no-fappers talk about how eliminating porn from your life, you actually start to feel amazing all the time. You can get way more productive. You feel more confident, etc. And you and I have just been bouncing these ideas around for years about how good it is in our own experiences. So you and I are recording this episode to dive in a little deeper.
Oh boy. It's a big one. I've been waiting for this episode, and I feel like, honestly, in a lot of ways, this might be the most important episode to talk about. Personally, I would say that. because this is something that I have definitely lived with my whole life into now, realizing the effects of it. And just how like minimal it starts and how innocent it starts. And I'm only now hearing influential speakers and people online, even the NoFap community. Like I never had heard of that before. And when I did, it started kind of giving me this hope of, you know what, this is a discussion that hasn't been talked about yet, but needs to be. And not just for men. This is the interesting twist. I think this is a human issue. It's just kind of glamorized in a way, or I guess kind of encouraged by men, which then affects obviously the females because they're the objectified victims of this whole movement, really. So it's interesting, man, what you said about like you used to have anxiety and or you had stress and all that, like that. All people don't realize what you will not know what you're addicted to until you remove it from your life, like anything. But so many things are culturally accepted and supported, even specifically sex, that you are raised to just believe it's normal, it's natural, and to think otherwise is unfathomable. And I feel like me and you have had this discussion with our friends and people and peers of imagine not watching porn or masturbating, and a lot of people just shut down and say, why the hell would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it opens up a whole other question. Well, why? And
Absolutely. Why do you think, if you were to say why, what would you tell them? What are the things that you think would be the first things you would mention?
I think it always started in conversations very casually of like, well, could you? Like, what are the odds? We play what are the odds all the time with our friends. Like, what are the odds you could not jerk off for a week? That's a very common comment I've heard. And it turned into this joke, but then it was kind of like no, but actually, like, what are the odds you could stop watching porn for a day, for 2 days, for a week, and I think there's two sides to it. And I mean, I'm probably diving in a little deep off the top here, but porn and masturbation, I'm kind of talking about, they both go hand in hand, but then that is the Pandora's box to overall addiction. And, mainly sex addiction, sure, but like everything else opens up because you're playing with emotions now, you're playing with humans. And that's a realm that I don't think our society understands is so valuable and important to nurture and to educate ourselves on and respect. And we don't respect our bodies. We treat our bodies as pleasure palaces, and we inject pornography, we inject dopamine every day because it's culturally accepted. But little do we know, it's slowly eating away at what it is to be human, and it's justifying so many things that are unhealthy. And over time, it's like rust. It just deteriorates your soul. And I mean, that sounds kind of deep and a little daunting. I don't want to go into these big scary rants right now, but at the same time, I'm talking, I started this new decade with a lot of learned lessons. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I'm not saying I'm not still diving into this area, but there's a lot that I've stopped doing, and there's a lot that I'm talking about now. And 2020 has been an interesting year for everybody, and I think this was a massive part of it. Was now we're all at home. Everyone's been at home. It's like an excuse now to watch porn and an excuse to just release your stress because the world's falling apart, right? Everyone's complaining, and there's a lot of terrible things happening right now. And from a distance, if you're isolated in your home, I can't imagine anxiety, mental health, like so many things just going through the roof in people's lives, that these little vices they don't know they need, mainly porn and masturbation. It's available. It's healthy, right? So why not do it? And then here we are going back into the world.
Yeah. But, that argument that it's healthy, I find is the most interesting one, because truly, like, it's an interesting topic because I'm sure masturbation is healthy, but it's like everything. It can be healthy. in the right balance of it. Like maybe not doing it every day, even if you're not watching porn, probably isn't good. You're like blasting your brain chemicals away. And that's the whole premise of why I think a lot of people do this, is because
Right.
they're like, why am I wasting that? Like I want my brain to be charged up and ready to be optimal and not tired or anything like that. So
That's a huge
yeah, I
part.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, the argument that it's healthy is a really interesting one, because I just remember hearing that so many times in school. And literally I forget what it's called, but it's like health and wellness when you first start learning about puberty in school.
Really.
And they're like, don't feel bad. It's okay. It's natural.
Right.
And I'm sure that kind of is what primed a lot of young men to be like, oh yeah, it's fine. I'll just watch porn. Like it's natural to,
It's justified.
yeah. But, and this is where I remember you and I were even having this debate with a friend of ours at one point in Toronto. And
Mm-hmm.
that was his argument. And he was like, it's normal. Other animals do it. Other like monkeys do it. That was his example. And it's like, sure, it happens in the animal kingdom. But if you want to actually boil it down, like which monkeys are doing that? And I'm not trying to turn this into one of those like alpha, beta, male type debates, but like it's the beta monkeys that do that. The ones that get beat up by all the bigger ones, and they never ever get to have sex with the females of the pack. So they're in the corner masturbating. Like it's like they are the betas of their communities. And the thing about being human is you can kind of decide whether that's what you want to be. And if you want to watch porn in your basement all the time as a young man, is that the choice you're making? You're kind of making the choice to become that beta monkey in your community. Unless maybe you are someone who has your life together. But in my personal experience, and a lot of the men I know who defend their porn watching, it doesn't seem like the people who are watching that are the people who have everything together emotionally, professionally,
Yeah, I think like,
physically.
but that's, and again, it's not a judgment thing. I think going back to what you said about like learning this in school, the one thing I've now understood and noticed about education, culture, and just overall acceptance of sex in our generation and our, in our culture is it's actually very shamed. I think the theme I learned was at a young age, when you find pornography, you're so young, and that's your first. I guarantee there's statistics you can look up on this. I don't quote me, but they're up there where like the majority of males, like their first introduction to sex is through some sort of hardcore pornography. And I definitely am a victim of that at a young age. And it's something that you think is just, I just saw my dad's Playboy magazine when I was 3 years old in his basement, and like it doesn't really mean anything. Flash forward, 40 years, and I'm gonna use my good pal Kanye West as an example here, which I like to quote a lot. But to be fair, he's the only person I ever heard say, I had been living my whole life around the Playboy magazine I found in my dad's garage when I was 4 years old. I had to put that in every piece of work I had. He made a whole album, take a guess, brownie points, of which one, where he blasted pornography in the studio during the whole production of it. And it's one of his best albums. I mean, arguably, Dark Twisted Fantasy. And I look at someone like that and I'm like, now he's completely flipped and he's back to faith roots, and he's back to like this surrender almost to control. And he's like, you know what, this is exactly what messed me up. I'm a recovering sex addict, and this is why. And then again, I'm just going on a rant about that, but to me it comes down to shame. And we're told that masturbation and porn and sex is normal at a very young age, but I think it's out of fear that parents and teachers put it into children's minds, because they don't want to have sex talks with their kids. I've talked to parents personally. I've talked to parents, they're like, you know what I've heard the most, because I have this conversation a lot now with people, and a lot of them have said, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do when my kid asks me about sex, because they're just not, they see it as a awkward thing. And I'm thinking, well, I get that, but at the same time, you're going to need to, because your kid's probably already watching porn
Oh
if he has an
yeah.
iPad. And that's a whole other conversation right there about like this generation of, like, we used to have to find magazines and like printed literature, like VHS, thick tape, like thick VHS things in back of variety stores. And now it's, you literally have an iPhone. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's shame based, and I think it just comes down to that. And I think that's something that I've been unraveling honestly my whole life, and recently now I've finally come to this conclusion and understanding of what's been holding me back. And I mean that not in a way that my life has now finally miraculously changed because of NoFap and because of no porn, but it, it kind of also is. Now I've felt so happy and so content and so understanding. I appreciate women from a distance way more than I used to when I was watching porn, because you can't stop your brain from going there. Like, think about it. It's culturally accepted. It's called an F boy. I'm not swearing. My mom might listen. Um, but you know what I mean? Like, there's like this culturally, like, oh, guys are like this. They're all, and I'm like, yeah, well, they're encouraged to be like this.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I
it's a
mean, that's an
cycle.
interesting, like the shame thing is, I think you're absolutely right. Like that's how society frames this whole experience, is it's a shameful thing.
It's a hush
Um,
hush thing.
yeah. And that's why this topic that applies to almost every young man is barely ever talked about. Um,
They
it's
never talk
it's
about it.
it truly is an epidemic of
It
mass
is.
proportions. But yeah, so I guess really, I mean, it's a tricky conversation, and I don't know the answers, but yeah, reframing it could be part of the solution, because it has to be talked about. There has to be a dialogue, and it's probably
Yeah.
not gonna. There's not going to be too much dialogue until people like you and me aren't ashamed to have this conversation, but
Right.
the whole society has to view it in a not shameful way as well for it to become a societal conversation.
Yeah. And I think just to touch on this, who, like, to people listening, because even us going on about porn's bad, we don't watch porn, we don't masturbate, now we're living our best lives. It's like that's also coming across, maybe like people are intimidated and feeling judged or like shameful, again, the shame. And I get that feeling, and I'm hoping by listening to us rant about what we ranted about so much, it won't come across that way. And I'm actually just approaching this as like everybody struggles with this. I don't care who you are, what age. I'm talking children, little kids to like elderly people. I'm assuming that's the stretch, but I would definitely think, because what's the ultimate? The ultimate thing is like sex. We're here because of sex. You get married, you have partners, and then you have kids because of sex. So sex is like the most, it's life. It literally is life. So why are we perverting it? Why are we turning it into this, like, again, like it's a quick fix. It's instant gratification culture, right? So we have endless social media platforms and videos and like songs that just promote sex. It's just been a thing. It's like nonchalant. You don't even think about it anymore. But now people are starting to pick up and realize, wait a minute, I don't feel right. And that's a good conversation starter. Like, yeah, if you're feeling like you're losing sleep, you're stressed, you don't have as much confidence, you feel insecure, you got to remove stuff to figure out what you're allergic to, right? And I think the one thing people don't even want to give up is porn and masturbation, because they're fixated on like it's healthy. And that's a conversation, man, where it gets really interesting, because a lot of people say, well, I, like, for example, this is a pretty specific one, but I've heard people be like, well, if I go on a first date, I'm going to make sure I masturbate before, so I can focus on them. I've heard this multiple times. I'm thinking, whoa, that's very interesting to hear, because all that's
Hmm.
saying is I'm so fixated on the lust and the passion of meeting a new person, like an attractive person, and like obviously I'm going to want to get with them, but I really got to behave and like get that out of my mind. So the least I can do is my business before
Yeah,
I meet up with her. And this is a common thing.
it
And to me, I'm
is.
thinking, wait a minute, there's the issue. It's like you don't have self-control because you've never given yourself a chance to try and control it. And I'm telling you,
Ooh, I
this
like
no
that.
fap movement, that's what it's about. That's the conversation I just brought up earlier when we're sitting at the table with our friends. Hey, like, could you do a week without it? Could you do 2 weeks? What are the odds? That's as simple as it starts. And you've seen firsthand how defensive people even get. They're like, why would I? It's stupid. I don't need
Hmm.
to. It's like coffee, man. It's like, oh, could you give up coffee for a week? Well, no, why would I? Well, could you give up, it's little vices and it's like innocent things. And I'm sure coffee is not bad for you, but if you're having like 10 cups a day, losing sleep, and you're getting angry at your coworkers every morning because subconsciously you forgot your coffee and now you're angry because you didn't get your coffee, that's again, culturally accepted norm right there. But I think it's a deeper thing.
Hmm. I really like what you said there about the self-control, like giving yourself the chance. Oh man, that was genius.
That's
Good
it.
job.
That's what it comes down to. Hey, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But that's, yeah.
oh, I was just gonna say, at the end of the day, like that's exactly it. I've never even listened to it, but Joe Rogan, of course, I gotta pump Joe
Hey, I
Rogan
might
up
have
a
listened
bit
to it.
because he's a
I've been on
very
a
intellectual
streak.
man. But
Mm.
he always talks about this book called The Coddling of the American Mind, and it talks
Ah,
about um, young people like our age and younger, and about what exactly it does, like living in instant gratification culture. I've read the cliff notes on it, so I just kind of know the summary, and
okay.
also when everything comes easy in your life, what does that do to you? And it doesn't do very good things. Like you have to want to change, and the reality is that will always take discipline. This
Hmm.
myth that life is should always be easy, like I being someone who's in kind of the spiritual community a little bit through my meditation stuff, I hear this term very often, like follow your bliss. Like you'll know when an experience isn't right for you when it feels hard. And it's like,
Right.
no, that's kind of the beauty of life, is like everything requires effort and commitment. So you have to choose what things really matter to you and commit to them. They're not an attached, like you can't be attached to an outcome that you want and expect it to occur. You have to be committed to it. So you really need to know what is right for you. But um, yeah, and holding back, just holding your urges truly does like create this discipline. And I can't even help it. Like I'm one of those people who, when there's like data and like proven things about anything that's kind of a little more metaphysical, like even not masturbating and watching porn, I can't help it. Like I feel like that's who I am in the meditation world, is like the cross section between the science of it and the kind of original practice. But
Right.
so, it's like fascinates me that there's this practice of discipline, but at the same time, it like changes the chemicals of your brain to be better. Um, and yeah, I feel like I gotta quickly fit this in here, but just like what you were saying, like this really is not about us promoting that shame of it again. Like
Right.
there are a lot of guys I know, and I'm sure I know women who are watching porn as well.
I'd
And
say everybody that's listening to this, including us,
quite
victims of
likely,
it.
yeah, quite likely a lot of them. And
Right.
the reality is it's just
It's
um
a lot.
I don't know how to word this exactly, but it's like it's just I want everyone to be able to experience what you get out of being free from that.
Yeah.
Like I
100%.
kind of like the way I kind of see addictions is like when you are a slave to anything. um that's kind of like my personal definition of it. Like just think about all the little things that you're almost a slave to. Like this is what I was kind of a few years ago when I kind of started on this path of really transforming my life. I was like, what am I a slave to? Instagram.
Hmm.
Many of my friends notice that I deactivate my Instagram for months at a time regularly because I don't ever want to be a slave to that. What am I also my
Nice.
slave to? Ice cream. And that's not a bad addiction, but
I know that
drinking.
firsthand.
Um, yeah, I'm a slave to, uh, honestly, yeah, like porn back then. And just think about what your life would be if nothing was there pulling you and you were just going to it. Like it's purely
Mhm.
just you and yourself choosing exactly what you want to do and who you want to be.
Yeah.
And that is, this podcast is more about empowering everyone to embody that and kind of just think about it. Like take this information and do what you want with it. But this
Yeah.
is an account from me, an account from you. And if you ever choose to go on Reddit or NoFap, you will see that thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world are seeing the same benefits. Their lives, they just feel a little bit better.
A lot bit better, let me tell you. And the thing
Yeah.
is, again, people are going to hear this at different levels in their life. And I'm someone who's a slow learner, and I'm 28. Like I'm still learning a lot, but I'm so thankful that I've been through what I've been through to get here, to even have this kind of conversation with a close friend, because I think it's super important to flip the norm and go out of this mentality of, you know what, we're all monkeys that it's natural to do. And I'm thinking, well, no, we're bigger than that. We're humans, actually. We're human beings. We have souls, we have purpose. And just because you justify an animal doing something, it doesn't mean you should do that. And it comes down to the control thing, the self-control thing. And I don't want people to feel ashamed. I just want them to maybe take another look into their daily routine. And the thing is, man, it's so innocent. It starts on Instagram. It starts when you open your phone. It starts when you see a YouTube video. It's so innocent. You walk down the street, and the one thing with the NoFap movement, which is interesting, is you actually get to a point where you really can appreciate beauty. And it sounds cheesy. It sounds kind of hilarious, but you can actually understand, like, wow, that person is just beautiful, and they're so good looking, and it's not just lust fueled. Because when you're watching porn every night and you go into public, it's going to have an effect on you. You're going to see a cute girl, because guess what? There's 7 billion people in the world, and a lot of them are good looking. If not, everyone has their own unique trait, right? And the thing is, that's going to start triggering you. And now you're going to go on Instagram, you're going to see something else, and Instagram is way more, as we all know, that's like the gateway drug to porn. Ask any guy, and this is a conversation that's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but like a lot of people start on Facebook or Instagram, they see something, it triggers them, they end up on another website, and then the rest is history. But then this becomes a routine. I've even heard in relationships, when I've talked to people in relationships about this too, like couples who approve of it, and girls who would encourage their guys to watch porn when they're out of town. I've heard this. I've heard it justified. It's like, well, I'd rather him watching porn than sleeping with someone else. And I'm like, well, doesn't that bring up a bigger issue? Like, the control is not there, so we're just trying to tame it with porn. And I think people don't admit it, but that's kind of what it can come down to. It's an addiction. It's an addiction that you, in the back of your mind, in the core of your gut, you know, it's huge. It's a big elephant in the room, and no one's trying to talk about it. But it's the biggest elephant in the room. And that's where I came to in my life, where I realized, you know what, like, why are my relationships in this cycle? Why am I attracted to the same type of female? A lot of our friends listening will love this rant. But the thing is, it's something that's seated in you as a child, innocently, and nurtured over time. And with shame and guilt, and like, growing up in a home where it was just my mom, like it was just me and my mom. I didn't have brothers. I didn't have a father figure to, maybe help me, guide me, explain to me what, was right and wrong about the opposite sex. I had to figure that out on my own. And my education definitely came from, you know, porn and things that I was ashamed of even talking about. I've never talked about it with like my mom or anybody really. Now I'm ranting about it because I think it's important to bring up and just let people know that it is normal what we're going through. This is like, it's 2020. Like, we have a lot of things we're juggling as humans right now, but the core, that core lust and like sexual desire is something that through generations has been an issue. Now we're just in the technology era where we have access to fantasies like 3D virtual reality. Sorry, I'm in the middle of a race right now downtown here. But yeah, you're in the middle of this boom of porn, man. It's everywhere. You can't, like, now porn's not even porn. They just say, oh, it's just, it's just the new Cardi B video. It's normal. It's just a TikTok dance. It's just TikTok. It's like, well,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, the sexualization of everything is a pretty huge topic as well, but we could talk about that for hours probably.
Oh, we could go on with everything.
But you're right. It's a really new age problem. We live in a technological society, and a lot of our problems are going to be technological problems, just like cyber warfare and people finding access to crazy stuff on the internet that they maybe shouldn't while they're 12 years old on their iPhone that they have so they can call their mom
or younger
when they're in the park. Yeah. And you know what? Oftentimes younger. I do want to talk about,
times.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like even like I was talking to a couple of my friends here in North Vancouver today, and about this topic, they were asking, hey, what are you recording about today? And I was like, this topic,
spicy.
because I'm really passionate about it. I think it's really fucking important.
I just love porn, man.
Yeah. Well, they were honestly like completely on board about it being a really important conversation. But the one girl was telling me a story about her friend or like a friend of a friend. It's kind of a distant person, but I think she heard about this story from a friend about another friend. But just this girl who's, met this guy on a dating app, and on the first date, he was like, just so you know, me and my brother often hook up with girls together. Like, oh, are you okay with that? Because like, that's what I'm looking for. And she hasn't done it yet, but apparently she was like, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit weird. She just like kind of dodged the question or something. And apparently he just keeps asking these questions like, are you okay if we bring this other crazy situation in the mix? Are you okay if we do this other crazy thing? And
oh boy.
I mean, she's taking the mindset of, oh yeah, like if I just ignore it, it'll probably go away. And it's, first of all, that's a whole different subject. Obviously it won't. That's what the person wants. They've clearly told you. You're not going to wait it out. But second of all, it just makes me think about, there's two things I think I want to touch on in this episode that we haven't dove into yet. And it's like the crazy escalation of how raunchy the content has got on porn. Because I think that's actually part of the huge problem. Like it's actually weird where it has gone these days. And also the subject of like young people on their phone. And when I mean young, I mean children. I remember like years ago when you and I were the only ones talking about this, we went to a documentary kind of talking about all the situations teachers are dealing with in school with literally young boys acting really inappropriate because they've seen it on porn sites, and they're like 10-year-old, 9-year-old, 8-year-old kids. And that just is so damaging to their brains at that age too. But I think that's probably like a really important thing to talk about, because I think there's a lot of problems, but it's different when you're like, oh, a bunch of adult men are deciding to do something with their own decision-making skills versus this situation where we have young children like scarring the way their brain works by seeing these crazy videos. And porn used to truly be little porn mags. It was Playboy, and you'd see naked girls. And I'm sure for the young men of that era, like amazing. That was like amazing. And then it just was like, oh, sex on cameras. Oh, like pizza guy delivering whatever comes over, and it all goes down.
Stepbrother, is that you?
Now it's like, this is disturbing stuff, but
It really
Like
is.
right now it's at the point where it's like, this is the kind of stuff 12-year-old boys are watching, and it's like videos that are titled of like family members hooking up. And I don't want to make this video like, I mean, this podcast like too like out there for us to even air
No,
it, so I'm
but
not going to go into it. But it's like,
yeah,
think about what that does to people, like what that primes it for. And even this is something that I think is actually a little bit scary to me, but um like like I hate this word because
mhm.
I really I feel uncomfortable even saying it, but like rape culture, like, is it
Oh
not
yeah,
promoting that? Is it not like sexualizing that experience?
100%, man.
Like, I feel so wrong. That feels like a word I did never wanted to even say, but
But so that's part of the conversation. Literally, like this is the issue.
right,
It's like even I know what you're trying to say, and it's like even now, I guess it's a 2020 thing. Like you got to be careful what you say out loud. But at the same time, no, like this is the problem. You go on Netflix, man. I remember like a couple months ago, during of conveniently in the middle of all this, one of the first thing I saw when I went on Netflix is this movie called like 365 Days. I think it's called, and it's like the 50 Shades of Grey, but the Netflix edition of it. And I couldn't stop for 2 weeks of hearing all these girls on posts all over like Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, everything. They're talking about it, and I just did some research into it, as in like I watched most of it just skimming through, and I was like, wait a minute, this is available on Netflix for anybody. It's straight up porn, man. There's like actual porn scenes, like long drawn out sex scenes, and it's like one of the number one, it was like number one trending in Canada. Like this is
wow,
the whole thing, and it goes down to, yeah, you know what, if you want to talk about the weird rape culture, these terrible things to talk about, man, that's the reality. Pedophilia, that's the reality. Broken marriages, like sex trafficking, that's the reality. This is all connected. This is what people don't understand, and maybe I'm going on a little bit of a leveled up rant now, but this is the stuff that you unlock when you let pornography and lust lead the way. It only gets to the next level. There's never a cap. So this is what we're told. We're told, oh, adults do it, 18 plus. First of all, 18 plus, like you're not an adult until you're 25. Your brain stops developing around that. You know what I mean? Like 18, sure, you can go watch porn, but like what I'm saying is it's culturally numbed. No one's talking about the implications. Only now it's becoming a bigger thing. Porn's the biggest thing on the internet. The internet is porn. The reason the internet's so big is honestly because of porn at the early stages. People don't realize the amount of money, the amount of resources. The other thing is porn's not free. And this is a big twist to a lot of people, which I really fixate on because I'm really trying to dive into this now end of things as I guess my newly awoken soul. But dude, like sex trafficking, it is fueled by porn. There's so many studies, there's so much evidence that you watching and consuming porn, it kind of ends up supporting really dark things that you don't even know you're supporting. And this is just the truth. And I'm not here to scare people. And again, going back to the shame and guilt thing, it's a lot to take in. Like, oh man, I was just trying to watch some porn tonight, and Chris is going off on this dark rant. But I'm saying this because it's the truth. Like, you look at top trending porn videos. Last time I looked, it was about stepbrothers and sisters and moms, and it's incest. And young teen girl, preteen, and then like mature. Like you have the spectrum of a human being objectified as a menu item with millions of categories on every porn site with millions of videos. And now people just make their own because it's everyone has a phone. So you upload your own. Now you have OnlyFans. OnlyFans is the newest craze in modern society, and it's still justified. It's in the news very casually. It's all just lust fueled, and anything that if that's your decision as like step one, if that's your anchor, it's going to lead you in a dark path. And this is not trying to get spiritual or trying to get political or anything. I'm just trying to say like that's just the reality, and I am an example of that, where a lot of my relationships failed because they were just passion driven and lust driven, and that's all I could focus on because you know, at least initially, because that was my porn brain from such a young age. This is what women are supposed to be like. This is what I'm supposed to chase. This is attractive. And it's all backwards. And that's why hookup culture is so backwards. That's why people are so confused and hurt all the time, because they don't, it's, you have to reinvent the wheel. And that's another topic we can go on about, but
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know, man. It's all connected.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what? I'm going to include the TED Talk that initially put me on this whole topic in the description, just so anyone who's
You
watching
should.
can watch it, because it might blow your mind a little bit, but I remember I've watched it so many times. Sometimes I go in there for a refresher,
Is
but
it Mark something?
I think so.
Right. Anyways,
Just an
put in
old
the
researcher
description.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the guy basically says, think about it. Like, you, in a matter of minutes on a porn site, get to browse through more potential mates, more like good looking potential mates than your ancestors got to do in an entire lifetime in
That's
like
crazy.
a 1 minute time span, you know? And yeah, and it also just, I mean, there's so many angles to this conversation. I don't really know where we switch it off and kind of like whatever, but
It's all
you know,
connected. That's why.
like, do these women look like real women? Oftentimes they do not. And what does that do for the expectations of a young man? I don't really know. I have friends who are so picky that they're almost 30 years old and they've never had a girlfriend ever. And I know that it comes from their choice to see things that way. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing is when it comes down to hookup culture. And this is one thing that I used to be totally and you know, they even say that this is what happens as you get older. Like, you're like the most liberal person on the planet when you're young, because of course
Right.
change is good and of course acceptance is good, but you can change your views without losing those. And
Of course.
the more I've learned, I've actually spent, you know, I truly do read about, between audiobooks, I'm crushing like 40 books a year. And the one thing that I've really it's become unanimously clear to me is that, like, human nature, um, like, humans are actually more likely to do well in life when they have a solid family situation. It's
100%.
completely clear in all the psychological research.
Mhm.
People who have had less sexual partners are more likely to find a mate who actually makes them happy for a long chunk of their life. All of these things. So you look at hookup culture and you're like, psychologically, is it really good for any of us? It's just pleasure. It's just like that need for more pleasure all the time. And I think part of this is like, and I don't know how it started. I don't know if it started through movies, through the way we're taught as young men, probably a combination of both. But men are honestly, like, young guys truly think like, if I hook up with a lot of girls, like, I'm more of a man. Like, I'm like a successful, confident guy once I've breached that accomplishment. And it just is not really the case. Like, is that really an accomplishment, or is having an awesome partner who makes you happy? And that's even another distinction. Like, there's a big difference between somebody who makes you look good because they're so hot and
That's
somebody
ego.
who makes you
That's ego.
happy.
Right.
Yeah. I think that I personally have really shifted, because who are my friends who are, I mean, just in general, like, I think having a solid foundation and somebody who's there to be supportive of your life and you're supportive of them, like, does that probably feeds you this life energy and life fuel that is a lot better than porn or like hooking up with strangers.
It's committed love, right? And I think this is something that, I mean, I'm only really learning about and understanding fully, at least trying to now. And passionate love is always there, the honeymoon stage. We have now taken the honeymoon stage and marketed it perfectly, packaged it pretty. everywhere you look, you can have honeymoon stage. You don't like someone, swipe right. There's a million more. And like if there's a problem with someone, next. If you don't worry about it, don't even want to date, that's fine. Just stay at home. You got porn, endless. You don't even want a girlfriend, that's fine. You can order one online. Dude, did you hear about this? This is a crazy thing. They have brothels they're trying to open in the States. There's one in Mississauga. I don't know if it got closed yet, but it's like a sex toy brothel. Have you heard about this? Sorry,
No.
sex doll brothel. Like you can spend an hour with a not a blow up doll, but like a real life manufactured female doll.
Oh
This
God.
is I know, and I'm thinking about it, and I
Oh
listened to
God.
their argument about this. And I dug into this. Like, there's a couple news articles about it. You know what? A lot of them said. They said, you know what? This is the safest way for us to allow a lot of people who can't, find this. It's a safe environment, and they were actually talking about like even pedophilia, man, and it was bizarre because it's like the argument there was, well, there's so many pedophiles out there. Like if we give them a fake, but it is dark, man. This shouldn't be a conversation that we're justifying and like trying to cater around. The whole point is this is an addiction. There's a deep-seated addiction that starts from lust, from shame. It's like nurtured by shame, guilt. What you said was so true. Broken families, man. How many of us have that? Everybody does. I'm a product of divorce.
I am as well.
every I don't know. I rarely know people who have solid families, and I'm not saying everyone's perfect or no one's perfect. I'm saying just that early childhood trauma, when you have to watch your two nurturing, loving parents split up, the little mannerisms in between that they think aren't affecting you affect your whole being. I'm a product of that. It's like once you start backtracking and you become self-aware, you start really seeing the chapters of your life, and you can read them for what they are and accept them without feeling terrible. And it's not, and again, that's what it comes down to. It's like, if you're not self-aware, this is going to be a hard pill to swallow. This is going to be a weird podcast to listen to, because I get it. It takes time and a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm. And
So
this is the one thing that I've really, I guess, on my journey and teaching people mindfulness and having a lot of deep conversations, not even only just through my podcast, but the fact that I do this, I happen to have a lot of these very often. Yeah, you kind of, sorry, my headphone's acting weird. Sometimes the rubber piece turns inside out in my ear. It's kind of strange, but
it happens.
I forget where I was even going with that. But yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I just got it back. So like in this journey of kind of talking to people and having a lot of conversations and even just teaching people meditation and some of the principles and lessons of being self-aware that come along with that. Sometimes it's like, I just want the best for these people so much, but
Right.
they don't have any interest in diving in. And it's really this interesting thing where I've had to learn how to detach and just kind of be like, everyone's on their own journey,
Exactly. 100%.
like that is what they need to be doing now, is focusing on other things. And this is what I need to be doing right now. And it's tricky, but yeah, I mean, to kind of like bring the self-awareness thing back, like my parents, right when I was getting to that age of puberty, like my parents started having a relatively unhealthy marriage, and the divorce followed very shortly after. And so when I was at that time of dating and starting figuring that out, I never knew what intimacy looked like.
Right.
So maybe this is a little different for people like me and yourself who didn't get to like actually have a model of it in my own house. Maybe it was there when I was younger, but it on a very unconscious level, because I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just a kid running around in the yard picking worms out of the dirt. And
Classic Sean.
so yeah, like my story of relationships had a lot to do with me, probably diving into that lust game a lot, thinking that maybe that's the answer. Maybe this is how it's done. And then also diving into relationships that had very unhealthy models of affection and intimacy. And then I eventually realized, like, I don't know what that looks like, so I have to learn myself. Like, I'm going to pay attention to my friends with healthy relationships, my
Right.
friends' parents who have healthy relationships, my aunts and uncles. Like, those are my models because I have to find them somewhere. But um, it'll be interesting to see what continues to happen in the world of relationships. You know, the divorce rate is getting really high. And apparently it hasn't
Yeah.
rose in a little while. Like, it got up to about 50% or something like that. And then it's kind of stayed there for a bit. So what is
Really?
happening there? I don't know. But um, yeah,
You
it's
know what? People are spending more time at home and trying to figure their shit out, maybe. And they're realizing, like, when the world shut down, you really have to actually, like, there's certain people who are such workaholics that it literally takes an epidemic to stop them for a moment. And a lot of those people probably realized, wait a minute, who am I? What is happening? What am I doing? Where am, like, you don't even know, man. We're just stimulated nonstop everywhere you go. Coffee, Instagram, like dopamine all day long. We're fueled by it. We can't even, we don't need to think for ourselves. We have robots to do that, man. We don't have to open a map. We don't have to do anything. It's just, that's what it comes down to. So why, of course, this is an epidemic with porn and self-awareness. Like, it's the last thing on people's mind. Why does it matter when I have a self-driving car and I can get any girl I want on Tinder? Because if that doesn't work, there's 3 other apps that will. Like, it's instant gratification, and it's just so stimulated and injected into us that it's normalized now. And this is the conversation. It's like, this is actually not normal. This is very unnormal. This is very anti-human in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, we're still going to be the humans that we are. Like, we've been coded this way over millennia. This stuff is not going to change very quickly. But yeah, it's an interesting thing this pandemic has done, because who are you without your distractions? Who are you when you have no distractions but your job? Do you like that job? You know, that's all you have to think about. I
Yeah,
obviously made a
totally.
really big life change. I decided, what am I doing in Toronto? Like, I love Vancouver. I'm a guy who likes being near the ocean and mountains. I grew up, snowboarding was my sport. It fueled everything in my being for a long time. So why am I ignoring that? You know?
There you are.
And I've been slowly getting better with this, because I was so just living my life for other people's expectations of it, or what would look good on the outside, until I kind of really realized that I'm going to be the most powerful and the most happy when I'm doing it my own way. But
Yeah, man.
um yeah, I mean, this has been a heavy conversation, which is what I wanted. I wanted to be kind of like dark and deep, because I
Hopefully
want
not
people
too
to listen
dark.
to this and be like, holy shit, people never talk about this, but these guys are doing it. Um, to hopefully get them to talk about it. Like, everyone, let's just all start talking about this a little bit more. It's something that there aren't many things going on in the world that are concerning, that quite affects literally everyone right in that moment, right every day. Um, and that's obviously arguable, but you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I look at it. I think like we're probably almost at an hour, but um, when it comes to bring this back to masculinity, not to
Mhm.
exclude females from this, but um, part of my podcast is not to exclude women from any conversation, but it's more to include men, because I think these conversations don't happen for men very much. These kind of deep interpersonal ones. So, where do you think? What do you think is the next step for masculinity as a whole, considering where we are right now, where most young men are growing up watching porn, most young men are experiencing this lust-driven emotional economy, if that's a good way to word it, and
Yeah.
finding themselves unfulfilled. Um, what are the next steps? I don't know. You don't have to have the
I,
answers, but I'm
I
curious.
think it's this, man. It's taking the time to listen to us two ding dongs talking about porn and jerking off. Like, for an hour. Like if you made it this far, congratulations, because it's probably an intriguing topic in one way or the other to you, because it definitely is to everyone. I just think no one's admitting it, or they're ignoring it because it feels shameful. It feels dirty. It feels wrong. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about that. But I think this first step is tackling uncomfortable conversations and feelings with yourself, within you. If you know there's something in your life that you know in your gut it's kind of wrong, especially for men, like, you know, you probably shouldn't be watching porn every night and masturbating in the dark every night and morning, and going on Tinder and trying to hook up with all these girls. I guarantee you don't, in your core, you know that's not healthy. And I think, again, I challenge any person, male or female, like, it's just a matter of self-awareness and taking the first step, like try a day without social media. Just try it. Write. You should write. I like to tell people, like, one of the biggest therapeutic things in my life, besides an actual counselor, is daily pages, like writing every morning, the first thing I do, just to get it all out. And, like, whatever it is, I don't even know what it is until that morning.
Nice. I didn't
And
know you were doing that.
I am.
I do
And
that as
shout out to
well.
there you go, man. Shout out to The Artist Way. That's the big book I've been plugging all year. I should be getting promoted or like something, but it taught me to just take time to nurture myself. And it's okay. It's okay to take 30 minutes every morning. I have the time. Everyone does. Just to sit down with no distractions, a piece of paper and a pen, and just write anything. The first 20 pages, 20 days, I'm probably writing about writing. I was like, what do I write? I am writing. What should I, like, I don't know. And it's fine. Just keep doing it. And then, anyways, long story short, I just think take little steps to nurture yourself, and to, like, if you feel like something is wrong in your life, or something's distracting you more than it needs to. And I think porn is a big thing. Lust is the main thing. Take a step back. Don't follow those girls on Instagram because you shouldn't. And, like, just don't maybe have your computer hidden in your room. Like, maybe do your work in the dining room so your roommates or your parents are, like, you have to almost push yourself, get uncomfortable with it, and, like, kind of make sure you have accountability. Find someone you trust and ask them the same questions that we talked about. Little things like that. Masculinity is important, man. Women are getting treated terribly these days because of men who don't know who they are and what they're doing. And we still have so much to learn about what it is to be a healthy male. And who would have thought in 2020 that being a healthy male means not watching porn and masturbating? Because I think a lot of people think that's healthy, and I'm in control, I'm getting off, I'm rewarding myself. It's the opposite. I think a healthy male, at least the one I want to strive to be, is not in control of dopamine and this lust drug that we're all infused with. So, I don't know. There's
Well
my little
said.
spiel.
Yeah,
Hey.
well said. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is something that my girlfriend says quite often, but is it really a female problem that they have men harassing them, or is that a male problem? It's a male problem.
Ooh. Yeah.
Right? Like, should they really be responsible for fixing that? No.
That's a podcast right there about.
Yeah, that's a whole different one. And like, her and I have debates about a lot of things. She's probably a little bit more liberal than I, where I kind of sit somewhere in the middle, I think. But yeah, like, she's right, I think, in that regard, And I don't like this whole, like, attack on masculinity that's going on either. Like, calling every guy who's a masculine man toxic masculinity. That's not true.
It's dangerous.
That's just not true. And it is dangerous. But there is a bit of work that can be done in the way modern men are being raised and the messages they're being taught. And even just, like, going back to that Coddling of the American Mind book that Joe Rogan always quotes, like, developing strong men so that they can be better men for women, and to stand up to other guys who, are proponents of this like objectification of women problem. So that all comes from having strong, solid men. And so we want strong, solid men in the world. Like beating up, calling that toxic is not going to help the cause. It's
Right.
weak. It's weakness and other things where those problems all come from. So, yeah,
It's
I
true,
feel like
man.
that's, yeah.
That there's a lot. There's everything's so connected to this topic. It really is. Like we're all in it together, men and women that are causing and affecting. Like this whole thing is interconnected. And if the when a guy doesn't know who he is and he's acting out emotionally reacting to things, and he feels like he deserves porn, he deserves women, he's going to treat women on the street differently, and then those women are going to feel like they need to act a certain way or vice versa, and that it's a whole cycle, man. I think it's males, definitely a male problem that we're doing this to women, but also I think it's both sides, and we have a lot to unpackage, a lot of podcasts to go through.
I like that. Yeah. We'll keep a few more of these coming out.